Okay, thank you very much. Thanks to the crew who've joined us here in person this morning, and then to everyone online. My name's Tom Newton, I'm part of the MaxCare team. Dean Fry probably owes us a beer. He's just emptied this room pretty quickly after their presentation. Appreciate those of you who have come. So just before I introduce Geoff to you, and unfortunately Adam, who was going to present today, is unwell, so you're stuck with me talking with Geoff. But just quickly on MaxCare, we're owned by a business called Maxim Foods, which is a privately owned Australian business based out of Brisbane. We've got manufacturing sites in Melbourne and in New Zealand. And just a bit of background on what we do, we specialise in infant animal nutrition. So we focus on that pre-weaning phase of calves, and predominantly calves, so all infant animals, but 90% of what we do is actually calves. We specialise in infant animal nutrition, but part of that is the main part of that is product. So and our core range of our products is milk replacers. So, and when we say milk replacers, we're talking about alternatives to actual whole milk to feed calves, and that's the core of our business. And then over the last few years, we've started to add more products into that, things like electrolytes, probiotics, whole milk additives for people who don't use milk replacer. And then I suppose for us, we've got a real belief that if you buy a MaxCare product, you'll get a quality product, but what you'll also get is exceptional service and support from our team. And when we say service and support, we're talking about not only getting the product to you in full and on time, but also all the technical support and education and backup that you need to help you get the best possible results you can with the resources you have available through the great sales team we've got who are very passionate and enthusiastic about what they do, but also with the likes of Geoff, who you'll hear more from today. So that's, and probably the other most important thing is not so much how we do it. We'll talk a bit more about that during the day, but it's actually why we do what we do. And we've got a tagline of growing stronger every day, but for us it's far more than just a tagline. It is why we do what we do, and we're absolutely focused on growing stronger animals. Helping you get the best possible results we can with the animal, with the resources you have available, growing the best possible animals we have. But also growing stronger people. So both internally, we try and create a safe and supportive environment for our team where they're empowered to help you get the best possible results you can, but also by providing education and development to help our customers, teams grow stronger. To help get better results. And the follow on from that is stronger partnerships. So helping grow stronger animals and stronger people, we hope will grow stronger businesses, and ultimately will be stronger partnerships to have with us, because the success of everyone else's business, our distributors and our farmers' businesses, helps make our business much stronger. So, and then stronger industry. So we try and involve ourselves as much as we can in the industry. The main part of our business is dairy, so we try and involve ourselves as much as we can in the industry, whether it be supporting events like Dairy Week, or promoting the industry, promoting pathways in the industry through programs like Cows Create Careers, where we're the major supply partner. They're things that we really believe in. We really believe in giving back to the industry. And finally, it's stronger rural communities. So we're really conscious that we need to give back to the communities that we live and work in, and again, whether that be through supporting a local sporting club or a local community organisation, or by supporting local shows and things like that. So they're all things about why we do what we do. I mean, obviously as a business we need to sell product and we need to make money, but the real driver behind what we do are those things, is this growing stronger every day. So that's just a little bit of a background on MaxCare, but today what we want to talk about is we've developed, and it was going to be really relevant for Adam to speak, because Adam's been with us for 5 years, and he came from out of the industry. So he had a banking background, so came in knowing nothing about calf rearing, and over the 5 years, he's often said there's just so much, every farm's different, and there's so much to learn about, calf rearing. There's just so many steps along the journey to get great results. And so he actually came up with this whole idea of sort of coming up with simplifying the process as much as we could, and that's what we just wanted to talk about a bit today. Is we've just come up with we really want, our mantra at work is to make our customers' life easy. So we've come up with what we think is a really simple checklist of just the key things we need to tick off each season to help you get the best possible results you can with your calves. And So that's what we'll run through today, and the beauty of having Geoff here, and so Dr. Geoff Irish is, he's been with Maxim for 4 years and has got a really extensive ruminant nutrition background, which we could talk most of the session about that, Jeffrey, but we'll let your knowledge speak for itself. But yeah, Geoff, we've been very fortunate, but Geoff does all our formulations for our business, but we've been very fortunate to have him to be able to support our team, both from a training point of view, but also be able to get him out on farm and help our customers get better results. So great to have Geoff here, and we've also got Leslie Wright here, who's our one of our sales managers, along with Adam. Leslie sort of looks after Gippsland, and then pretty much northern New South Wales, Queensland, Western Australia, Western South Australia. So yeah, quite a lot of the country. So great to have Leslie here. But we'll sort of roll into it today, and I'm just going to introduce each section of what we call our sort of calf rearing guide, and then Geoff's going to talk about why each point is important. And by no means are we saying that we've covered everything today. And as you guys know from Murray Dairy, Dairy Australia's got great resources like the Rearing Healthy Calves Handbook, which has got far more detail and all the information you'd need. All we're trying to do is really simplify it so we can pull out the key points, and then we can delve into that information in more depth in those sort of resources. So really we're just trying to create something that's really easy for you all to sit down, talk about with your staff, and just make sure we're ticking off these key points. So we'll get into it, and the first section of it is pre-calving care. So we don't want to get to calving time and have the first calf hit the ground and then go, right, we better get ready. We need to be, we need to be prepared months in advance, and that's all around making sure we've got our calf shed set up nice and clean, hygienic. We've got, that we've got all the feeding equipment clean, disinfected, ready to go. We've got fresh bedding, but we've also got our policies in place and our checklist, so we know what happens when that first calf hits the ground. And these are all tools and tricks that we can help you with along the way, and we'll talk a bit more about that later. So making sure we've got all the supplies we need as well. So Jeffrey, if you could, can you just tell us why that stuff's important?
Thanks, Tom, and thanks for those kind words earlier. Yeah, so my role today is, we quite often talk about what we should be doing as calf rearers, but what I'm going to talk about is why they're important. So, between every batch and before we put any calves into any pens, we should make sure all the pens and all the feeders and waterers are sanitised. And there's lots of different sanitisers out there, but probably some of the chlorinated sanitisers probably work, as well as anything else. But why is that important? Bacteria reproduce by dividing in half, and under ideal conditions, they can do that every 20 minutes. So the population can double every 20 minutes. So that's sort of shown here on the chart, where you've got one bacteria. 20 minutes later, you've got two. 40 minutes later, you've got 4. And by within an hour, you've got 500 million. But over a 24-hour period, you can have 5,000 billion. So that's 5 with 21 zeros after it, which I was going to put on here, but it sort of didn't fit on one line. So you can imagine, between calving, whether if it's a few weeks or a few days, if you've got if you don't sanitise properly before at the end of the last batch or at the end of the last calving season, you can have a really heavy load of bacteria. So so that's the importance of good sanitisation, and you should do that straight away rather than leave it until just before the calves come in and everything like that.
And please just ask any questions if you've got any as we go. But Geoff, just quickly, the question people will ask is, oh, well, does it matter? We haven't had calves in there for 6 months. How is it still important to sanitise in that situation?
Well, some particularly protozoas can live in the soil for 2 years and everything like that. So cocci and crypto and things like that. But even if the bacteria have got a substrate, so if you leave feeders with part feed in it, those bacteria can just live there and everything like that. So bacteria need a substrate to stay alive. But so if you've got any organic matter at all left, they'll live in that organic matter, and you put calves in there, and they'll just take off again too. So.
Yeah, and probably also we'll talk more about that, but the importance of just that daily cleaning and sanitisation as well because of that.
Yeah, same thing. Yeah. So.
Okay, beauty. Does anyone have any queries? Okay, so the second one, and this is something that has been talked about to death probably for a long time, but it is still on every farm we go to when there is a challenge. This is still, colostrum management is still the first thing we talk about, because it is still one of the ones that is one of the most challenging, can be one of the most challenging to get right, but it's also the one that can have the biggest impact on productivity and also health of the calves. And we talk about, I think as the process has gone on, there's been 3 Qs, 4 Qs and now 5 Qs, and we just talk about the quality of the feeding, so making sure the quality of the colostrum that we feed is that we're testing it and that it's of high quality, that we feed it quickly, so we're saying within the first 6 to 12 hours. We recently, last year, went to a conference in the US, and they are now talking about the first 60 minutes. So they talk about the first hour of that calf's life and the importance of getting colostrum in as quickly as we can in that time, so they're even talking shorter time frames. And then the quantity, and basing that on a minimum of 10% of the calf body weight. Squeaky clean, so we're stretching it with the Qs there, but just making sure, again, back to the making sure we're minimising any contamination of that colostrum, and then quantifying it. So it's one thing to treat a calf, but making sure that's been successful, and that can be done by a number of different testing measures. So, Geoff, can you just talk about why this colostrum is so important and why do we talk about it so much?
Yeah, when a calf's born, it's virtually got no immunity to, or no antibodies at all, no immunity. The reason being is that the antibodies aren't passed across the placenta to the fetus. So when the calf's born, it's virtually got no immunity at all. And as Tom pointed out, the intestines can only absorb antibodies really for about that first 24 hours, and even after 6 hours. And that's in the chart there in the bottom. It sort of shows that the absorption of antibodies across the intestine in the young calf. So basically, you need to give that colostrum to give all the antibodies and immunoglobulins that calf needs. And in fact, the immunity of the calf is very doesn't really kick in to probably about 2 weeks of age too. So that's the other thing to point out. Whenever you're looking after calves, you should always start at your youngest calves first, if you have any sort of feeding or treatments or anything like that, and move to your oldest calves, so you're not bringing challenges from the older calves to the younger calves. And I've heard a lot of people sort of say that we leave the calf on the mum for 6 hours or 12 hours or something like that to give it an opportunity to feed. The problem with that is that one thing is you don't know what the quality of that colostrum is from that cow in the first place, but also the calves don't struggle to feed very well from mum anyway, because the other's so low to the ground and everything with our modern dairy cows and things like that as well. So, leaving it to chance or whatever is a big risk. So, it should be, as we talked about with the 5 Qs, you should be making sure the quality of that colostrum's adequate, and so the antibodies are high enough and everything like that. But as I sort of said, it's the immunity of the calf. It takes about that 2 weeks to really, develop. So without colostrum, you've got basically 2 weeks there without any sort of immunity. So.
Any queries on that? Thanks, Geoff. Right, so the third point we talk about is good nutrition. And this isn't just, obviously we supply milk replacer, but it's not just about the milk feed, it's about everything else. And the first point we've got there is just access to clean, fresh water from day one and ad lib, so making sure calves have always got access to that. Consistency, we'll talk a lot about consistency, but in everything we do with calves, consistency is the key. Any change in feeding, time of feeding, temperature of feeding, anything like that can have significant consequence. Regardless of what we're feeding, from a milk point of view, whether it be whole milk, calf milk replacer, whatever brand or whatever you're using, ensuring that it's of good quality and that you know the quality and ensure that, that it is up to the quality that it says. And we say, especially in those first 3 weeks, purely because that's when the calf is at its most vulnerable. Introduce small quantities of quality grain or concentrate. So we will recommend, having a concentrate available to calves from, pretty much from as soon as they're in the pen, just so they start getting used to it, they start nibbling on it. Having some good quality fibre And not so much from a dietary point of view, so we wouldn't want that fibre to be anything over 10% of their overall intake, but it's more that we'd rather see them have fibre to have something to chew on, have some fibre to chew on, rather than it does help to limit suckling of each other, but also chewing bedding and chewing things that aren't probably as good for them and could be contaminated, especially with things like bedding. And then growth in young calves can be influenced, so this is talking about the growth that we get in these first months can really influence growth through to lactation, but you're going to talk about that shortly, aren't you, Geoff? Yeah. But the importance. So, Geoff, if you can just talk about why it's important, please.
And I'm going to start with water. It surprises me how many calf rearers or how many calves don't get access to water for 3 or 4 weeks after birth. And the reason I hear for that is that there's a lot of water in milk or milk replacers and everything like that. So why the calves don't need water? But the water goes into the rumen, whereas the milk goes into the abomasum. So, and why that's important is that the rumen needs the water for rumen development. So the bugs need the water to be able to move around and survive in the rumen. But also, the water's just needed for hydration of the calf, and also, whenever someone makes a mistake with mixing or anything like that and gets the levels of solids wrong in the milk replacer or something like that, the calves can then go and drink water to correct for that if the water's available. I always talk about clean, fresh water because a lot of people sort of. I've actually got myself into trouble a couple of times by saying, would you drink that to a farmer? And they look at me and I say, well, that's what the calves think too, because then there's a direct link between water intake and feed intake. So you limit water intake, you limit feed intake, you limit growth rates. So I'm always one that I think Tom probably hears me mention it a lot of times because we have solutions meetings and everything, and I bring up this fresh water regularly. So it's one that's probably the most overlooked, and water's the second most essential element, for calves. I mean, first one's oxygen, the second one's water, basically. So, so it's amazing how many people underestimate. And there was actually a study in the US and where they surveyed, and I think on average it was 17 days or something before calves had access to water. So they were 17 days of age before they got access to water. And the impact that had on growth rate of those calves and everything like that was just huge. So not only that, they actually looked at people changing the water every day versus just, so when I say changing it, tipping out what's left and putting fresh water in versus just topping up the water all the time too. And it makes a big difference on how much water they drink on that fresh water. And as Tom alluded to, consistency is the key. Calves, all infant animals, but calves in particular, like consistency. So you change the time you feed dramatically, you change the type of feed you're feeding dramatically, you change the level of solids suddenly and everything like that, and it just leads to problems. And abomasal bloat's probably the most common one, but it just leads to other problems. So just the importance of consistency is just huge on calf rearing. And just increased nutrition helps optimise health, immunity and overall performance. And basically, as Tom alluded to before, any improvement you can get in growth in that early phase, you'll get payback in milk. And I've used an example here. For every 100 grams of average daily gain you can get an extra 155 litres of milk in that first lactation.
And Geoff, that's been proven a number of times in different studies, hasn't it?
Right.
And go right through whole of life production.
Yeah, and it's actually now people are looking at the effect on second, third and fourth lactations and everything like that, and it is going right through the lactations, but certainly that's that 155 was based on a big study where they actually took data from a lot of trials and everything like that. So that was the average finding of the 155 kilos for every 100 grams of body weight gain, live weight gain.
Right, thanks, Geoff. And after this, if you do have any questions, obviously Geoff's going to be at our stand for the day. More than happy to chat, but also the team. This is as much as a lot of this stuff. It mightn't tie into the day-to-day of what we do with our product, but all these things are what the team are here to talk to you about. So if you've got any questions, yeah.
Sorry, can I follow up back to that? Geoff, so just quickly, you talk about clean fresh water, but there's a great debate water sources. So channel water, bore water, town supply water, like where do you sit? So what are the complications of different water sources?
Yeah, and that's another thing we've talked about internally, and I've actually put together, I mean, I've taken data from recommendations, but we actually do have a table where you should get your water tested and levels that are suitable to feed the calves for all your minerals and, as well as microbes and everything like that. So we do have some tables and guidelines of, what you should test your water for and what's safe to feed the calves. But you're right, it's, you've got, different water, sources and everything like that. But we'd always recommend that they should test their water, at least once every year, their water that they're feeding their calves, and just check it to make sure it's actually fit for consumption as well from all your mineral levels, but also your things like your coliforms and CFUs, for coliform forming units and everything like that. So we always recommend that, you should check your water to make sure that it does, it is fit for consumption for those calves. And salt's actually a classic one. Calves are very susceptible to high sodium levels. So that's one that you do need to really monitor for calves. So if you've got high salinity water and things like that, it can cause issues with calves. But look, if as I said, we've got some tables and everything. If you catch up with us later, we can make sure we get send you a copy of what as I said, it's just stuff that we've taken from the literature, but we've put it together. So.
But it's a really good question, because what we do see, and you probably see it up here a lot, is, depending on how the season goes, the change in the water table, but also the change in the quality of that water, even if it's from the same source. People go, we're getting it from the same source we got it from last year. Going, but how much rain have we had since? What's happened to the water table since? I'd imagine it would vary quite a bit. Yeah, question, thank you. Weaning, this is an area we talk about a lot, because we can put a lot of time and effort into these calves in the first 8 to 12 weeks of life, and then we can often see, if not done properly, the weaning transition, we can often see a weaning check, and so we can undo a lot of the great work that we've done. So we talk about, one of the checklists on our checklist is just making sure we've got our weaning sort of protocols down pat. And making sure that we're monitoring those growth rates. And Geoff, again, if you could just talk about why this is important.
Yeah, so one of my favourite questions when I'm with a group of calf rearers is, when's the calf ready to wean? And usually I get answers when it's, as high as a 44-gallon drum, or it's, weighs a certain weight or something like that. And it's, obviously it's a baited question, because it's got nothing to do with the size of the animal or the age of the animal or anything like that. It's when the rumen's developed, it's ready to wean. And the best way to know when the rumen's rumen's developed is by measuring its feed intake. And I've got some levels here of 1.5 kilos a day for a Holstein, and 1 bit kilos for the Jersey cow. But and that's when it's ready to wean. So, again, as we sort of said before, with consistency, when you're weaning a calf, we'd always recommend that you do it, over a period of time. You don't do it abruptly. The other thing is, when you're weaning, you want to, because that's a fairly big challenge, if you like, on the calf. So you want to only really subject them to that one challenge at that time. So you don't want to be sort of dehorning or vaccinating and everything at that same time. And we'd argue that you should leave them in the pen after you wean them for a little while until they've adapted, and make sure they're in feed take, make sure they're in feed intake, eating still and everything properly.
And just on that, Geoff, just as far as needed to be eating that level, you'd want to see them eating that level for a few days?
Yeah, over a few days.
Yeah.
And you'd have to be careful, because we tend to group rear a lot, and you'd have to be careful that that all the calves are consuming. So probably I would, if it's a group rearing situation, I would probably go, maybe 2 kilos for a Holstein Friesian, as an average intake, because you're not measuring individual intakes. But certainly that's when they're ready to wean, is when they're at that 1.5 kilo intake a day on average over a few days. So the other thing I'd always recommend is, don't wean them and then sort of, move them out into a paddock and just sort of, leave them. I'd recommend that they're kept on a reasonable feed quality for a period of, so they're fed a concentrate for at least a little while, probably at least a month or so after they're weaned as well, and put out in the paddock. So, because weaning them straight onto grass grass is not all that nutritional for calf growth and everything like that as well. So that's what I'd always recommend. I've got here they reach 200 kilos. I don't know how many people would do that, but that's what we would recommend, is that they're at least on a good quality feed for that, up to that weight.
Thanks, Geoff. And the final stage is just around health management, and this is probably more from our side is focusing more on prevention rather than treatment, and not always easy, but. And so how do we do that? Minimising exposures. So again, that comes right back to the very start when we're talking about sanitation, cleaning the sheds out before we start calving. But also through the season, just understanding what tools are available to help manage disease. But also then making sure that we've got processes and protocols in place for if we do get a sick calf, how we're going to manage that, how we're going to keep. Also, how we're going to keep records of those calves so we know which calves have been infected. Can we quarantine them? Having clear treatment protocols and understanding what vaccination plans are available, what treatments are available, and how we'll use them and when we'll use them. So Geoff, if you want to.
So the important thing is calves are always going to be exposed to multiple pathogens. The important thing is minimising that exposure. So basically, how many, going back to the sanitisation we talked about before, so how much pathogen they're exposed to, but also how their immune system responds to that challenge as well. So again, going back to what we talked about with the colostrum feeding and everything, and building up that immunity. Also, finding the source of the infection is essential, because if you know what the source is, then you can reduce the spread of it, but you can also help control it as well. And that's easier said than done sometimes. But but if you don't know what's causing the infection and where it's coming from, it's pretty hard to stop. And again, going back to what I said before, an effective sanitisation protocol. So. We've actually done that. We've got protocols we can provide our customers, with just about all the processes that we've talked about today. So having a protocol that all the staff can follow about how they should sanitise, when they should sanitise, what they should use, and everything like that. If you've got all those protocols and or standard operating procedures and everything in place, then then it just sort of helps prevent a lot of these problems.
Thanks, Geoff. And I think too that probably the one bit that we haven't included is once the season does finish, so that's kind of the end of the cycle, but then the one thing that we try and do every year is have a review meeting with all our customers, or it's something we encourage all our customers to do is review how the season went, because every season something changes, every season a new challenge might pop up or a new opportunity, and it's making sure that we review that and remember that for the following year and put plans in place. So a couple of the things that some resources that we have tried to pull together to try and help with this process. There's a couple of different things. So last year we launched our MaxCare app, which is free to download. So any of you here or any of you online, but to anyone and any of your customers who would be interested, we've got a MaxCare app. It's got a few simple calculators on there that can help. Number one, that's more around calculating potentially how much milk replacer you would need to feed, the cost of feeding that, some things like that. But more importantly is the access to protocols. So there's a number of different protocols on the app there. We've also got a number of different standard operating procedures, and when we talk about those there, as Geoff said, like we've got sanitation processes, we've got weaning procedures that we can again give access to. Some of those are on the app, some aren't. There's also an app that's available to anyone, which is called the NRC app, and for those of you from a nutrition background will know about the NRC,
National Research Council.
National Research Council, thanks Geoff. So, which is basically, and this app is very simple to use, free to download, and you can literally type in what you're feeding that calf and it will spit out what your expected average daily gains will be, and it allows you then to go, okay, well, what happens if I feed an extra litre of milk? What happens if I feed an extra couple of 100 grams of concentrate? And it will help you get a bit of a gauge. Again, it's a model, but it helps give you a bit of a gauge on what sort of growth rates you can expect. So another great tool to use. And then again, the other thing it says there is MaxCare's here to help, and I suppose from our side, what we're trying to do is, as we said, help every farm get the best possible results they can with the resources they have available. And this is an example of some of the protocols or standard operating procedures we've helped develop for customers. So we had customers who were going, we're having trouble with this collecting newborn calves. We're getting lots of issues in that period. What can we do? So we've just got, and again, this detail's available in a lot of different formats. What we've tried to do is just break it down into some really simple steps. So that's an example there. So, electrolyte feeding is an example. That's an example of the NRC calculator, the app that I was just talking about, which helps calculate your average daily predicted gains. So there are a couple of tools. The other thing that we have sort of developed as a team is, unfortunately, when we're dealing with animals, things can go wrong. And so it's going, okay, well, what happens when something goes wrong? And from our side, MaxCare's there every step of the way, so whether good or bad. So when things do go wrong on farm, what can we do? So this is a process that we have in place where we try and, number one, go, okay, is it an animal issue? Is it a product issue? What happens? And then if it is an animal issue, as far as animal health, what can we do? And this is a process we go through where we've got our own internal triage, and then we can engage vets. So we've got agreements with vets around the country where, if needed, we can engage vets to get on farm and help with that process. So again, just an example of I suppose, how we can potentially help you get the best possible results with your calves. Jeffrey, did you have anything else you wanted to say, or were there any other questions or comments? I don't think we... Did you have anything else,
No,
Jeffrey?
that's it for me.
Yeah. Thanks, Geoff. Well, yeah, unless there's any other questions, thanks again for coming in, for signing in online, and we'll wrap it up.
Thank you.
Thanks.